it's important to realize the relationship that we have with love, and it's one that's mainly important in everything that we do in life, because at the end of the day, I think that we all search for love in people, we all search for love in ourselves, and we all search for love in life, and maybe we call it and define it different ways, but realistically it comes down to the same, and it's sort of to be accepted and embraced for who we are, and to somebody that to find understanding, right? Whether it's within us or within others, right? Preferably it would be within ourselves, but we want to share it with people. We want to share it with a community. We want to share it with someone. And so we got to understand a couple of things though, because if we keep going through life and making the same mistakes and having the same expectations, we will always be disappointed. And so one of the main things is to understand some things, is that unconditional love does exist. But even unconditional love has a condition. And that condition will be that you remain true to yourself. Because without that, then nothing makes sense anymore. You can't just love somebody and them not even be themselves, or like not being true to themselves and start to lie to who they are, and etc. That won't work. The minimum of for love to be able to work is so that people are true to themselves. And if that fundamental is already applied, then love can exist. But if we don't even start there, if we can't even be true to ourselves and who we are and the present moment, and tell ourselves, between us and also from one person to another, then how are we expecting to find any love at all, right? And so starting with that, then it's like, okay, well, what else? Another thing that we do a lot is misunderstand the relationship that we have with people, and we think that it's other people's problems, and it's other people's fault, and etc., and we fail to understand that we're always going to attract the people that we are. If you look at the relationships that you have or you've had, you'll see that there is something, that a trait that will relate you to that person. Something will be a link for sure. Otherwise, you guys wouldn't even be able to understand each other. There wouldn't have been that sense of intimacy. It will be linked to something. And so to understand that is to see, well, what is it that made us, connect? And if it's pain, right, then it means that you both were looking for solutions, and maybe you both failed to find them. And so that is something that we can take as like, maybe it's my fault. I wasn't able to give that person the answers. I was lacking answers myself. And I wasn't able to heal this person's pain because I was going through pain myself. And maybe I wasn't able to be as present because I failed to be present for myself. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day about this exact thing. Is that he kept saying that he felt that all the relationships repeating themselves. And I was like, well, what don't you like about that person? Why do you feel was problematic about them? And he said something along the lines that basically he felt like they weren't present at times where he needed them. And I was like, well, are you? Right? Like, are you present for times where he needs you? And he's like, what do you mean? Well, I'm like, didn't you say that you consume this or that when you feel like you're trying to get away from a feeling? Then it's like, what are you trying to get away from? And long story short is that sometimes we do that. We consume something in an attempt to get away from an emotion. But when we get away from an emotion, that emotion is something that we feel, that we need help with. And by ducking that, by trying to get away from that, well, we're abandoning us, really. And if that's who you are, that's what you do, well, it's kind of natural that you'll find people that do the same. If I start to draw tomorrow and I make a whole, life about it, and that's who I am, I'll find probably people that like drawing too. If I start to work out, I'll find people that like working out too, because that's be what I talk about. That'll be how I move. People will be able to tell, etc. Right? So it's like, if you're not happy with that, right, then you know where to find that and figure out where do you make the change, because that's how we communicate. That's how we work as people, right? And it's not always people's fault, and there's no point in saying that it's people's fault, because it takes away from the power that you have in your life. How does that benefit you to say that it's their fault and they are messed up and they are the problem and blah 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 blah? it doesn't serve any purpose, because in actuality, you can't do anything about people. You can understand the link that you have with them, but if you look at the accountability, if you go with accountability and think, well, okay, well, realistically, I was messing up because I do that. I'm not there for me. How can I expect people to be there for me when I'm not? It's like the video I made earlier, right? The culture of how do we deal with ourselves, right? But in this case, it's more about understanding that there are all these dimensions to who we are, to love, and to realize that really what it comes down to, the point of this video, is really this honesty that we needs to have with who we are. That we need to be able to be like, where am I messing up? Where do I feel like I'd like to be better? Who do I actually want to be? You know? And if I aim for that, right? And realize that like that's who I need to act like, then I'll have the relationship that I actually want to have, right? So what would be this perfect outcome of who I want to be? And the more I work towards that, the more higher the quality of relationships that I'll have, because I'll treat myself like who I want to be, right? And I'll push myself towards there. And then that's the culture that I'll be giving to people about me. That's how I'll talk about myself. That's how I'll move. That's how, etc. And that's how I'll be treated. But, I think it starts with that. Just embracing like the reality that we're living. Understanding who we are, not knowing who we are. Right? Just being able to say like, I understand who I am, where I come from. I understand where I'm coming from. And I understand, by the same case, we'll understand where are we going. Right? And that's a personal conversation. But the deepest of the intimate conversation we have with ourselves will come down to results in those outcomes. And so I hope that that brings an understanding as to why, why do we do these things, why is it so important to do all this working out and eating and stuff like that? Because it's not really related to just muscle, I'm not up here at 3 a.m. because I want to be bigger, I'm not out here just doing all this because I'm trying to bench this amount of weight. But when we realize the impact that these things have in your life, that if you realize that you have a certain leverage and a role to play in this, and that how important it is that if you find out what does it mean to be true to yourself, that it can result in these things, such as having love in your life, right? What does it mean to love yourself, and then it's going to result in the relationships that you have with people, that you could be of value to the people around you, and then you'll get real moments and real value back and love back for the love you give. Then you realize that there is worth in that, because all the experience that you'll have will be different based on it, And so realistically, all of this, right, being able to eat a certain amount every day, it's kind of like being able to receive from life and embrace meet your needs so that you can be able to give back. To be able to perform to a certain level is to be able to apply yourself, right, on anything, and then be able to do that through life. To be able to create a physique which is impressive is to be able to create something which people will be inspired to do as well. So it's not really just about muscle, right? All of these things are natural things, but the perspective at which you approach them with will change everything in life. Because you could go through the same motions without the outlook for it, without the intent. But then what's the point, really? Well, you won't have the same outcomes because the perspective wasn't the same. And so all this to say that you have a role to play in the love you have in your life, and it starts with the relationship with yourself. And there are things that you can do to change that and to remove the distraction that you have from who you are and the reality that you're experiencing is step number one. And you can do that. You can control what you can't control. You have to focus on what you can control because it's your life. It's not other people's life. So it's important to stop blaming them. And you could do things such as diet so that you can practice being able to receive from life. You could work out so that you can practice to be able to apply yourself to a certain level so that you can do that in other areas in life. You could be able to create a physique that is inspiring to yourself and to others so that other people can be drawn to do the same too, right? And listen to what you have to say, right? And now you can be more comfortable in yourself and around other people. And yeah, you could also reflect on spend time just thinking about why do you do what you do. And by being able to give this type of meaning to your actions, you'll be able to get respect from yourself and from people. Because respect is, I've heard this on YouTube actually, but it's, if you break it down, it's respect. It's like a second perspective. People giving you a second perspective. And you got to give yourself a second perspective first. If your actions are based on something deeper than the surface level, well, there you have your second perspective. Respect. And so yeah, we all these things can be just solved so easily. And that's the whole blueprint to it. And the higher you're able to perform all this, the higher you're able to receive from life and embrace and meet your needs, right? The higher you're able to perform, right? To apply yourself to things, the higher you're able to create an outcome which you're proud of and inspires people, the bigger the impact you're able to have on life. And if you realize that the people that have trouble receiving from life, right, are sort of, it's kind of like people who are not able to accept love in their life. And it's like, why those people can't perform at the same level because they don't believe that they're worth this or worth that, right? People that aren't able to that don't apply themselves to an extent and hold back from people find themselves to believe that the world is a hypocritical place, but in its reality is them that are holding back from the world, right? You could have done better, you could have done more, but you didn't. And it's like, why? And you figure out why, and you practice actually not doing that and not holding back, then you'll live in a world where people don't hold back because you're not, right? And if you're not able to receive love, because love is there, so you can practice meeting your needs, right? So that you can live in a better world, and you realize that like love is there. All the world is listening. People listen to everything you say and do. People care. It's just that you're not able to accept it, right? And you can practice that. You can practice accepting life, accepting, love. So you can practice giving, you can practice receiving, and then creating the outcome. That's within your hands too. Making it an attractive thing. It's like art, right? That's part of your job. Your responsibility is to create something which is, that draws people in so that you could be a leader in whatever field that you have. And that's why marketing exists, right? And yeah, all that to say that, a lot of troubles that we have really come down to that. They really come down to, when you break it down, it's really just that simple. Being able to give, being able to receive, and creating an outcome which inspires people to do the same. And if it works for you, it's going to work for other people. And if it works for you, then you'll be able to have love within yourself, right? And to live a more wholesome life, not one which is like the opposite of wholesome. Not whole, it's partial. It's going to be partial because one of those things, receiving, giving, or not being able to inspire people because you failed to create something which was attractive, something which was impressive, something which inspires. And so, yeah, that's what leaders do, right? Leaders are supposed to inspire. Leaders are supposed to create the world. People are supposed to create a life which like creates, which inspires, which like, moves people. And so, yeah, I hope this makes sense, and I hope that brings a different perspective, something which allows us to have a better understanding and move forward and create a better life within ourselves and also like, outside. And it's really not just about fitness. It's deeper than that, and it has to be, so that we can find meaning. So even though people might think that like, oh, it's just about muscle or just about physique and it's superficial, it's really not, really. Like, it just depends how you decide to look at it. If you don't need, or you don't feel the need for all that, maybe it's not for you. But not everybody does the same thing for the same reasons.